So good morning, everyone. Let me clear my throat. Thank you, George, Alderman Cardenas. Always a great champion and leader. It's great to be with all of you today on Earth Day. So happy Earth Day. You know, I'm old enough to remember growing up in the 60s and 70s where Earth Day was a big deal. And it was, I think, in one of the first times in a long time back then that we were starting to really awaken as a country and understand our responsibilities for stewardship of the land under our feet. And we've come a long way in some ways, but as we all know, particularly from the dire warnings that we are seeing every day, and particularly coming recently from the United Nations, that there's much more that we must be done. I was joking with somebody the other day who came to Chicago from a southern state and was complaining about our winter. I said, oh, honey, you don't know. You do not know what it used to be like. And even we can feel this here. We're probably going to be more fortunate than places on the coast as we see the warming of the planet because of where we're situated, but it doesn't escape us. We've got to do more to address the rising lake levels. We've got to do more to address the fact that we continue to generate waste and filling up landfills. It's unsustainable, the path that we are on. We've got to do more, as Angela would be the first to tell you, where do we generate the most carbon? From our buildings. So we've got to do more to make sure that we're retrofitting them. And I'm a firm believer that the city government has to lead by example on these social policies, which is what really brings us to today's announcement. So I too want to join Alderman Cardenas in thanking Angela Tovar, Chief Sustainability Officer, who's really our guiding light on these issues. I want to thank Dan Lori, our policy chief, but I also want to thank all of you, the people who have been toiling in this vineyard for quite a long time, and know that you have a partner, a committed partner in me and my administration on moving forward and doing our part as a city government to make sure that we are doing more, challenging ourselves, challenging the private sector and not-for-profits to make sure that we move together in a way that is going to leave our earth and our city in a better place for the next generations to come. But also, we've got to continue lifting up our voice to advocate at the national and international level, because we can do our part in Chicago, but as you know, we're part of a much larger ecosystem, and what happens outside of our geographic boundaries deeply affects what happens here. Let me also thank Plant Chicago Executive Director Jonathan Pereira, who's graciously hosting us here today. I just learned that this building was built in 1908 as a firehouse and remained so for a number of decades. Well, as most construction in 1908, I live in a house that was built in 1898, so I can tell you they weren't thinking about sustainability back in those days. So I'm looking forward to the transformation of this building and the grand plans that Jonathan and the team have for really making this into a different and livable space. Let me also thank Family Matters Director of Grants, Management and Community Engagement, Ann Hinterman, and Action for Climate Emergency Associate Director Tanisha Harris. You'll be hearing from them. So setting and implementing bold and equitable climate goals are necessary at every level, As government leaders, one of America's largest cities, and by working in tandem with community partners, we are uniquely positioned to address the climate concerns and needs of our residents and bolster efforts to create more resilient, healthier, and safer communities. That's why since 2008, Chicago has been a global leader in the climate crisis, becoming the first major U.S. city to develop a comprehensive climate action plan that sets ambitious goals rooted in equity and collaboration. So fast forward to today, 14 years later, I'm proud to say that my administration will be deepening our already commitment by releasing next week Chicago's 2022 Climate Action Plan, which will chart our pathway to a more sustainable and equitable future. This strategic plan outlines updated goals and specific actions that city departments and sister agencies will undertake in coordination with community partners, institutions, civic leaders, and residents to mitigate the disastrous effects of climate change and become a pillar of my agenda to build a more inclusive, racially equitable economy right here in the city of Chicago, as well as realize a thriving green economy for all of our 77 neighborhoods. One of the biggest goals we've outlined in the plan is to reduce emissions in Chicago by 62% by 2040. And folks, we can get there. We can get there. To ensure that we reach that goal, but just as importantly, ensure that our most vulnerable communities are able to feel and breathe the benefits of this work. This goal is supported by 5 strategic pillars, and let me outline them now. Lower costs on things like gas and electric bills and increase household savings. And let me pause on that for a moment. If you don't have a lot, what you end up doing every single day is juggling one bill versus another. We see too many times that people who are challenged financially end up making decisions that hurt them because they don't have the money to make ends meet. So we have been, and we will continue to push utilities to get real about the realities that people are living in every single day all over our city when it comes to their right, let me emphasize that, their right to have heat and water and electricity so that they can live comfortably in homes and apartment buildings. So we have a lot more work to do on that, but again, leading by example, but also using my bully pulpit to push the utility companies and not to pass on the cost to ratepayers. As you know, these companies are making a lot of money. They are making their stockholders extraordinarily wealthy. They're making their senior executives extraordinarily wealthy. It is time to share that wealth with the common man and woman who are desperately in need of relief, particularly in this time of rising prices. And so I commit to you that we will continue to push on those issues. Another thing that's important as part of our pillars is to reduce waste and create new jobs. And I touched upon that earlier. We are generating way too much waste in the city. We've got to go back to what I was taught when I was in the elementary school, starting with educating our children about how to be good stewards of the earth and creating real opportunities at the family level for them to be able to do the things that are necessary to also be good stewards and good partners and taking care of our earth. We've got to catalyze Chicago's clean energy future and strengthen communities and protect health. That's critically important. We must also recognize that low-income communities and communities of color are disproportionately impacted by climate change, as they are more likely to be overburdened by pollution and other forms of environmental injustice from legacy industrial uses across our city. That's why each of the 5 pillars of our emissions goals contains interconnected climate strategies designed to better serve all of our communities and address economic and climate justice. I'm a broken record on this, but equity and inclusion, after all, is a process and not an outcome. We have to be intentional and determined and persistent in order to get there. By working these values into every aspect of this new climate action plan, we will be able to advance actions to mitigate climate change while equitably centering our residents, communities, and city at the heart of those efforts. To that end, I'm proud that our administration has focused its efforts in drafting this plan on engaging thousands of residents, meeting people where they are, coming into communities, giving people opportunity to participate in written and oral surveys about what your pain points are and what you'd like to see in the work that we are doing. So we've been ensuring the voices of people like this in this community right here who have firsthand knowledge of what a badly insulated home can mean for their pocketbooks. We work with owners of large apartment buildings, utility companies, community anchor institutions, small businesses, and labor unions. That's a hallmark of how we get policy done. We don't sit on a fifth floor and think grand thoughts and then roll it out to the community and say, here's what we have for you. To borrow a phrase from the disability rights community, nothing for you without you. So we always start by coming into community with a humble heart and a listening ear and making sure that we are reflecting the true lived experience of people in the city in whatever it is that we're rolling out, and we've done exactly that with this new climate action plan. My team held town halls to make sure this plan was widely socialized, and something I insist to ensure that we're breaking out of the echo chambers of City Hall. To kickstart the implementation, in my last budget approved by City Council, we are investing $188 million in equity-focused climate and environmental programs, spanning everything from building energy retrofits to the expansion of our air quality monitoring network and planting, something that I'm personally proud of, over 75,000 trees across our city. Thank you. And I just want to say about the green space and the trees in particular. I've walked in too many neighborhoods, on the south and the west side in particular, where you don't see anything green. And I said to my team a couple summers ago, I was on the west side walking down Madison Street. And for blocks I walked. And I was walking that day with members of various street outreach team who were talking to me about the work that they were doing to tamp down violence on the west side. But I was walking, I noticed a lot of asphalt, a lot of concrete, a lot of vacant lots, trash strewn, but no green space. And I think about a child growing up in that environment, and what would you think about your life and your surroundings if you don't see trees, if you don't see green spaces? That's why the planting of these trees, to me, is personally so important. But as we know, trees are essential in addressing the effects of climate change. So the sum of these actions represents the beginning of our transition to a climate-just society. Right now, we have an incredible opportunity in front of us, one that allows us to address the ongoing threat of climate change and maximizes local benefits for communities by prioritizing those most vulnerable to climate change and helping them, and by helping them, helping us generate wealth and secure employment through a thriving green economy. By drastically reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, developing renewable energy resources, and centering nature-based solutions, we can sustain our communities for generations to come. I have to also say that I am so supportive of the federal government and President Biden's efforts through the infrastructure plan to also start making concrete, specific steps on sustainability. We want to be a part of the electric vehicle grid. We want to be a part of building electric batteries for cars and for trucks and other modes of transportation. This is something that we talk about on a regular basis with our federal partners. I was just over at an event yesterday with the Department of Defense that's opening up a research and innovation hub here in the city of Chicago. So there are lots of things happening. We just need to make sure that we are focused and determined to keep moving forward. So with that, I will yield the podium to our next speaker, who is Jonathan. But I just want to say, I can't think of a better way to celebrate Earth Day. We have a lot of work to do. We got to roll up our sleeves and protect our communities. But we will get there by working together. Jonathan?